I'm not trying to bury the Conservative Party, though many pollsters and pundits seem to be doing that for me, but instead to offer a sober and surgical analysis of what may well be the most precipitous decline of any political party in modern history. For the for the first time since Theresa May's waning days, the Tories now languish in fourth place in national polling. Not third, not tied, but fourth. And for an opposition party, that is remarkable. Behind Labour, which is unpopular, behind the Lib Dems, and most embarrassingly behind Nigel Farage's Reform UK. Farage, of course, is gloating. I don't normally talk about another party, but... and according to the latest YouGov poll for The Times, support for the Conservatives has dropped to an anemic 16%. Reform stands at 29%, Labour at 22%, the Lib Dems on 17%, the Greens trail on 10%. This isn't a statistical blip. This is a crisis of confidence so deep that if the Conservative Party were a listed company, its board would have been sacked and its shares suspended. So the roots of this implosion, first, we have to acknowledge the long shadow of recent Conservative misrule, the ghosts of Boris Johnson's clownish entitlement, Boris Johnson's extraordinary potential squandered, Liz Truss's fiscal catastrophe. There was no potential there in Liz Truss at all, except that she had a chancellor of immense intellectual power who kowtowed into her experiment. And Rishi Sunak's managerial monotony, again, someone who was kowtowing into what the backroom boys wanted. Because the moment he was released from number 10, he emerged again with the sort of wit and wisdom that we saw when he was chancellor. Extraordinary. The constraints of power didn't seem to stop Boris Johnson making a mess of things. Austerity, Brexit's deadlock, Partygate, inflation, and 6 leaders in 9 years have shredded both institutional coherence and electoral loyalty. But blaming the past is not enough. Kemi Badenoch assumed the leadership 200 days ago with bold rhetoric and a mandate for renewal. And what has followed is unbelievable inertia. Since her election, Tory supporters continue to hemorrhage across nearly every demographic, even among 18 to 24-year-olds where one might hope to find green shoots. The party polls at just 12%. Labour, the Lib Dems and the Greens all outpace them. And more damning still is Badenoch's own personal polling, a net favourability of minus 36. Only 2% of the public believe she is destined for number 10. Well, they are mad. And among Conservative voters from last summer, just 5% still see her as the next leader of the nation. Her refusal to articulate a coherent policy platform until 2027. 2027. She won't be around in 2027. Reads less like strategy and more like surrender. Or laziness. Meanwhile, Reform UK, with barely a handful of MPs, now polls as the leading opposition party in the public mind. Farage, ever the political arsonist, has tapped into a vein of national frustration over immigration, taxation, political inertia. His party has stolen voters, not just from the Tories, but from Labour too, proving that anger is a powerful, if unstable, electoral force. The Lib Dems, too, are exploiting the vacuum once dismissed as the nowhere party of British politics. They now draw support from disaffected centrists, suburban moderates and former Labour voters disturbed by Starmer's rightward drift. Where then is the Tory message? Where is the vision? Where is the fight? Where is the personality, the charismatic leadership? What should alarm Conservative strategists most is not just that the electorate is divided, but that it's fragmenting and that the Conservative Party isn't grabbing anything. The combined vote share of Labour and the Conservatives has fallen below 40%. The two-party system is fraying. The public is not choosing between government and opposition. They're abandoning both. And yet, ironically, the Tories' salvation lies not in chasing Farage's populist tantrums, but in rediscovering their historic core: fiscal competence, pragmatic leadership, enterprise without recklessness, patriotism without paranoia. There remains just a constituency for measured conservatism, pro-defence, pro-Ukraine, sceptical of Brussels, but not xenophobic, committed to law and order, and deeply wary of Reform UK's economic flim-flam. But that conservatism must be seen. It must be spoken, and crucially it must be led by someone competent. That isn't Kemi Badenoch. That's unlikely to be Robert Jenrick. He's on the wrong side. He's waving the wrong flag. So who is it? Cleverly? Well, he's not really very charismatic. He's a filler at the very most. There isn't anyone. There isn't anyone. There's no one with name recognition who can take that role. And at present, Badenoch appears not only cautious, but invisible. A ghost in the machine, while the machine rusts. Well, not a ghost. A spanner in the machine. A spanner in the works. Gloriously sabotaging her own invention. If the Conservative Party is to progress, it needs to get rid of Badenoch. Who it puts in her place is perhaps of less importance, even with a Jenrick, though I think that would be monumental disaster. Jenrick, to his credit, is probably one of the more able performers in the House of Commons. But ability in rhetoric is not necessarily a guarantee of revival. In fact, in this particular case, it would be a guarantee of a union with Reform, and that would destroy what remains of the Conservative Party. And it's a long way back from fourth place. But the first step is to admit that you were there, and unless the party reclaims a compelling narrative, not against Reform, but for itself, then Starmer's assessment will become prophecy. The Conservatives are indeed a dead party walking. And Farage, he won't even have to fire the fatal shot. He'll just watch them trip over their own shoelaces. And I'm sure that will give him a lot of pleasure. He will stand there crowing.